This fight is gotta be on fire. The horsepower these two present, it's difficult to imagine for the fight to end in a decision. If you look at his stats, Jairzinho and Tai, both out of their 14 wins, there's only been one decision and otherwise no submissions and all by knockouts, which is quite expected for the fight to end with one getting knocked out as well. This fight is at stake for Tai though. So when he joined UFC back in 2017, he had 3 straight knockouts, then 3 losses, a wild comeback of 5 straight wins, but 4 straight losses recently. I wouldn't say he's on the verge of release from the company just because he's a heavyweight, Australian, a fun personality and never failing to deliver exciting fights even in losses. But he really needs to catch up though. If I remember correctly, he joined training in AKA just before the lockdown, and many thought we'll start seeing him grapple more, especially having DC and Velasquez as training partners. Well, we see him has gotten better in clinch fights, landing good elbows or fighting underhooks, but opposed to high expectations, he stayed pretty much flattened out against Volkov and Tybura, and started swinging wild against Gan instead, when he was wobbling. So let's say he's become somewhat a slight delusional version of Prime Velasquez. When it comes to this fight though, there shouldn't be so much of concern unless one of them chooses to surprise the fans by shooting takedowns. Jairzinho is a seasoned kickboxer. Though his resume is still very impressive, I wouldn't say he's once upon a time one of the world best. If you compare the level of competition that Adesanya or Pereira went through, I think there's a level of difference. Many fans will remember Jairzinho as the guy who got knocked out by Francis Ngannou. And there has been a question whether he can take punches or not, but we're talking of Francis Ngannou, a specimen of power that this sport had never witnessed, so I think it's about time we cast aside the doubts. In the case of Jairzinho, his lead hand is made out of something else. Junior Albini, Crowder, Andrei Arlovski, and Chris Daukaus, whenever he touched with his left, it seemed as if he was taking their souls away. So I would say definitely he's one of the hardest hitters in the current heavyweight. Stylistically speaking, the fight favors Jairzinho. Tai's hands are definitely fast, which meaning against another brawler, there's a higher chance of him shining in the pocket while exchanging, unless against the fighters with higher explosive hands such as Pavlovich. So I can imagine if these two decide to station their feet on the canvas and exchange in a wild fashion, Tai's hook combinations are more likely to land first. But that's a big if though, cause I don't think Jairzinho would sit in the pocket. If you look at his last fight against Shamil, so pretty much throughout the fight you can see him fighting off the range. It might have been the concern of Shamil taking him down, but this is not the first time seeing him rather wanting to take the fight in an elusive kickboxing match. And he did find success, I would say, mostly with his lead hand. That eventually got Shamil quitting. Can Tuivasa weather the storm? Yes, I would say. But if it's a question of him weathering the storm of Jairzinho, I don't think he will last. And it's not like we never seen Tuivasa wobble, so... If you compare the speed factor of these two, Tuivasa's hands are definitely faster. But he is really not a multifaceted fighter, whose combinations are heavily lopsided towards throwing hooks and swinging a wild overhand. So I would say definitely Jairzinho is by far a more precise and technical fighter compared to Tuivasa. Tuivasa tends to switch stances, digging in like classic Mike Tyson style because he's usually a shorter heavyweight. In the case of this fight, it's really less likely considering there's not much of a height difference. So if you look at Tui's fights, when he's not finding success in closing the distance, he tends to throw a massive overhand, then switching to swing his left. This is how he got Cyril Gane and Greg Hardy down. So I would say against Tuivasa, when he's lunging in with his overhand, you gotta pull all the way back, because if not, Tai will find an angle. I think the problem with Tuivasa is him always having to overcommit, which leaves him a huge opening as well for himself. So if Tai is overcommitting, timing the overhead, ducking down, circling out would be a classic again strategy for Tuivasa. Jairzinho is a typical Dutch kickboxer, which means he would be light-footed compared to conventional Thai boxers, and his combinations are likely to start or end with a kick. I can imagine Jairzinho fighting off the range of Tai, mostly finding success using his lead hand. In the case of Gane and Volk, whose jabs are solid, Tuivasa took quite some damage eating counters when throwing leg kicks. And if the fight turns out to be Jairzinho pressuring more and Tuivasa backing up, I really don't think fight will last so long. When Overeem was backing up trying to stay off the range of Jairzinho kicked off the canvas to land his left. So I think he possesses enough explosion, at least to close the distance, and you definitely don't want to be cornered by this guy. What's interesting is that if you look at their losses are against grapplers or fighters with a good sense of range management, initiating their fights with kicks, which in the case of this fight, both not really fitting in the chart, so we can definitely expect the fight to be a banger. I think the fight favors Jairzinho considering the techniques, and my prediction would be Jairzinho knocking out within first 2 rounds. But obviously this bout is heavyweight, so if the fight turns out to be the other way, I wouldn't be so surprised as well. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon with another analysis.